So, you have a twin sister. Boba Fett. Maybe. I don't know. Welcome, everybody. This is the Resistance Broadcast. I'm John. Thanks for joining us today. This is our Thursday show, which means it's time to give our takes in a discussion sort of way. We have a lot of great topics we're going to get into later. Lacey and James with me as always. And our guest is take a breath, is the bassist for the band Beartooth. Their new album Below came out this past Friday, so if you like awesome music, go pick up a copy, support the band. They will also be starting their US tour on August 14th, so head to beartoothband.com for dates and tickets. He joined us this past fall for the Mando Fan Show, and he is back, baby. Let's welcome back Ashi Bashar to TRB. What's going on, man?
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
How pumped are you to be touring again?
I cannot freaking wait. I'm losing it over here.
Yeah. Dude, did you have it planned like a while ago? Because I remember when you were on our show in December, you were like, I think we're going to pick it back up in August. And dude, you like nailed it on the head. So I don't know if you already had that planned out or what was going on.
Well, we must have got lucky, but we did have like a backup routing to a backup routing to a backup routing. The original plan was to be out earlier than August, of course, but I think we're one of the first, at least like heavy metal bands that's going to be like out doing it, just because we were trying to stay on top of it constantly and making sure that as soon as it was time to go, we were ready to go. So here we are.
Nice, man.
Absolutely insane. Yeah.
I got to listen to a couple songs off of your album, and I've been a heavy metal fan for a very long time. And I love the grooves on it. I think it's very catchy stuff, but heavy, crisp sounding. And I think it's going to be a great show for people to get back into the wild with and see how like hesitant people are to get close in the mosh pits and stuff. But that should be a pretty interesting thing. But I'm sure you're just absolutely jacked to get back out there.
So jacked. Lots of pent up energy, I'm sure. From people in the crowd and as well as us. So
really quick too, beyond touring, like, are you excited about like this record coming out and people finally being able to hear it?
Yes, it is. It's been a long time coming, and we're so proud of this record, and the response has been amazing so far. So we're glad that it's finally out and people can jam it, and we're so excited for this record cycle. It's going to be insane. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, nice, man. So Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. Yep. Go get it.
Yes, sir. Yes,
now, because you're going to be on the road, you're probably going to have downtime to like absorb your Star Wars stuff, but we need to make sure you know how to talk Star Wars still. So that's what we're here to do. So let's get going. You ready to talk some Star Wars?
Yeah. Put me to the test. I'm ready.
All right. So, James, you know what we do to kick off the show to get the wheels greased around here. It is our top segment, and which one are we doing this week?
The Force is with me, and I'm one with the Force.
That's it. You just heard it. One with the Force. I'm really excited about this. We're going to run through a couple different topics. We're going to each pick one answer that we've thought about ahead of time and provided that is our best response. So let's get started here. Choosing from these pairs of actors, I'll read them, that brought one Star Wars character to life, which combo did the best overall? So we get to pick one of these combinations. It's either Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan, it's either Alden Ehrenreich and Harrison Ford as Han Solo, or it's Donald Glover and Billy D. Williams as Lando. Those are the three options. John, I'm starting with you on this one.
All right, so I know listeners are going to put a booklet on me saying Alden and Harrison, but I have to go with Ewan and Alec Guinness, just because I really feel like Ewan McGregor was, like, you couldn't have picked a better person to play Obi-Wan, and even I think they did facial mapping to show that their like bone structure like is very similar. And he just absorbed himself into the character, made it his own. And now when you see him, you think Obi-Wan just as much as when you see Alec Guinness. And I love Alden Ehrenreich. I thought he was an incredible Han Solo. But yeah, maybe you could have gotten someone else to play him. I can't imagine anyone else being that younger version of Obi-Wan Kenobi anymore. So we'll see if I change that, if they bring Alden back for some more Solo. But as of now, since him and Donald Glover only had the small sample size, I got to tip my hat to Ewan, and I have to go with Ewan and Alec Guinness.
All right, that's a good answer. Ashi, let me know which one you pick. What do you think?
This was a good question and 3 great options. I would also have to go with Ewan ultimately, because like John said, he really made it his own thing. I think Alden Ehrenreich did a good job of doing that as well, but maybe it didn't land for everybody as well as Ewan did. And Donald Glover, I feel like, kind of was just playing Billy D. Williams more than, creating his own version of the character. So I kind of had to just go with Ewan. I mean, when I saw Ewan as Obi-Wan as a kid, of course, I didn't really think about the acting involved. I just saw the character on screen. So there was not 1 second where I was like, that's not Obi-Wan. Maybe if I was an adult when I first saw it, it would have been a different story. I don't really know. I don't really have that perspective. But for Alden and Donald, I was, much older, so I was able to compare and contrast in my head. Whereas when I saw Ewan McGregor, it was just, that's Obi-Wan, no questions asked.
Solid. All right, Lacey, what's your pick?
Well, I think some good arguments have been made for Ewan, but the question is pairs. So I think just the fact that Harrison Ford is listed, he automatically wins, because you can't have Star Wars without Harrison Ford. And even if you didn't necessarily like Alden's performance, which I loved, and I think he did it perfectly, and even Harrison Ford said it was perfect, Harrison will then bump up Alden's performance because it's Harrison Ford as Han Solo, which is ultimately like almost everybody's top 3 characters in Star Wars. Like, he is who you think about. I mean, besides Luke Skywalker, like, he's the next person I think about when I think of Star Wars. So I'm going to go with Alden and Harrison Ford because of Harrison Ford.
Nice. Good answer.
Good call.
Good point.
So it's interesting. I'm actually taking the exact opposite as Ashi here, and I'm going Donald Glover and Billy D. Williams as Lando. The reason
we covered all 3, because I was a little nervous about that.
The reason I'm going with this one is because the question implies that 2 actors had to make 1 character, and Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness, they're the same character, but they're different because Ewan made it his own, and that's a good thing, and that's totally okay. Alden, same thing. It's not Harrison Ford. It's a different Han Solo, but it's still really good, but it's Alden's thing. It's kind of his own version. Donald Glover is Billy D. Williams. They are the same character. Donald Glover and Billy D. Williams are both Lando to 100%. It's indistinguishable to me. I
For
think
the moment he said Han.
Yeah, I think he did such an amazing job at bringing that character to life, which is based on Billy D's performance. He didn't lean into the make it your own, kind of, do your own thing so that you can be regarded as the other Lando or the younger Lando or something like that. He's like, no, it's just Lando, that's the character. That's who I am. And I think he did the best job acting and conveying that character as one character simultaneously among the different timelines. So I got to go with that combination. Lando wins for me. But all great answers. Yeah, good reasons. All right, let's move on to the next one here. We all want to see the upcoming Star Wars content, all new content. We're all very excited about it, but it is true that some projects do get canceled, and we've seen it happen as recently as Rangers of the New Republic that was put on the shelf. So with that thought in mind, which upcoming live action Star Wars series would you be the least upset to find out it was canceled? It's kind of a tricky question because we're all excited to see it all. But Lacey, I'm starting with you on this one. Which one are you least excited about?
This one hurts a bit because I'm the type of person that I'm just excited for everything. So the fact that it's like, oh, pick one that you're not excited about. So I'm going to give kind of a cop-out answer. I'm going to say Lando because no one's tied to it yet. So it wouldn't be upsetting if they cancel it because we don't know if Billy D or Donald are coming back. Therefore, I could be like, well, they weren't really organized, so it's okay. And then whereas the other stuff, like they've locked in people for them, which... it's a challenge because you look at Lando and you're like, obviously I want Lando, but then you look at Ahsoka and you're like, but Rosario Dawson did such a good job and the whole Ezra thing and Thrawn, and there's so much there that we already know is coming. It's really hard to not be disappointed if that fell through. Whereas the Lando, we really don't know anything about it and no one's tied to it. So I'm like, what you don't know type thing.
Yeah. All right.
Fair.
John, you're going next on this one. What do you think?
Mine's Lando also, but for a different... But for a different reason. And James is like, I just said how good he was. But my reason is, I remember when there was the rumors of a Lando series, and I was on the podcast talking about how I thought that was a bad idea because I always saw Lando as a complimentary character. As awesome and cool as he is, I never saw the idea of, let me see Lando carry something and like be the lead. I never really felt... I always thought his purpose was serving the other characters and building them up and it being another, cog on the wheel of the story, not being the main driver of the story. So, then when I officially heard the announcement, we were sitting there on that streaming thing, hoping they were going to announce a solo series, and they announced Lando. I was like, oh, all right. Well, I do like Donald Glover, so yeah, maybe it'll be cool. I still don't know how they'd get Billy D in because I think he's like 83 now. So I don't know what they would do there. Harrison Ford's already hurt doing Indy 5 and he's 78. So I just think the Lando thing, I don't know. I'll still love it because I love Star Wars and I'm a glutton for punishment in that way. But I think if I had to pick one, I would say Lando because I really don't know that I'm super like as amped as I am for the other shows that are coming up.
Gotcha. Ashi, why did you too pick Lando?
I'm not going to go with Lando because I do have some hope that it will get off the ground and maybe they'll somehow swing it into a situation where they're talking about like Kira and Maul and the crime syndicates and things like that, because that's a story that I want to see continued. I do agree that they've basically got no information for us, so it's pretty easy to let go of at this point. And I was thinking about this question. And I was like, if you would have asked me like probably a year ago or whatever, I probably would have said Andor, because initially that show was kind of, I didn't see much value in going back and seeing that story. But the more that I've heard about it, the more interested I've become. But that being said, I couldn't let go of Ahsoka. I couldn't let go of Acolyte because that one is like really, really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still kind of got to be Andor, even though I have gained more interest than I had initially.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said Rangers, which it's already happened. So
right. Yeah. I didn't have a ton of interest in that one anyway. So
yeah.
Makes it a little easier.
I don't know. Maybe I'm the most controversial here. I think if I was going to get rid of one show, I had to get rid of one. I would say Mandalorian season 3. And
did you just quit the podcast just now? Because it seemed like you did.
Sizzling, scorching take from Camp Beanie.
It
Really?
seems like you just quit the podcast in 3 seconds.
Well,
That's wild.
My thought here is that we've already discussed on the podcast, maybe Ashi's not privy to this, but there's no way Mandalorian's going anywhere. He's going to show up in, Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett.
Does this count as an upcoming, though? Beanie.
Yeah, it's not out. They haven't started filming it.
I
But
feel like
Mandalorian's
he's
already...
bending the rules a little, but
Am I?
Because upcoming was like the things that they've announced that they haven't happened yet.
Well, Mandalorian season 3.
All right.
I'll accept it, but
Okay, my thought on this too is like, baby Yoda's not going anywhere. Mandalorian's not going anywhere. We still can continue to see these characters pop up in other things. But as far as the actual story of the Mandalorian going from here to there and delivering it, the end of season 2 felt like the end of the series. And I feel like if they came up and they were like, look, we worked on season 3, we thought about it, it actually isn't going to pan out. We have other plans for Mandalorian. That's not the last you're ever going to see of him. I'd be like, that's cool. I had a lot of fun with Mandalorian, but I feel like I can accept that I had a really good first and second season, but it would really suck to miss out on Acolyte or Ahsoka or Lando or any of these other series that we don't even know what those shows could be. They could be really awesome. And I had a great run with Mandalorian. So I'm okay with splitting if that was
James, I'm just hearing it's not you, Mandalorian, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm picturing already the quote tweets, the comments,
that's all I was hearing is like, it's been fun, but you know what? I just need space. I need
the Apple Pod reviews. James Baney is a bastard.
No. All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. I thought it was
now that you've explained yourself.
It makes sense because it was a good ending. It makes sense. It was a good ending.
It was a great ending, and like I think if they did say like, you know what, we're not going to go ahead with season 3 of Mando, you'll see these characters again in other stuff, but that was it for this particular show. I wouldn't be like overly surprised or upset. I think
like,
so I get it.
Had they said that before it ended and they were like, this is the last season of Mandalorian, we would have been like, oh man, dang, and then that would have happened and we would have been like, that makes sense. That was a great
Skywalker,
that was a great end to it. And the fact that they're coming in and saying you get more Mandalorian, I'm like, that's awesome. But also I don't need more Mandalorian because I got a great Mandalorian. So it feels like Breaking Bad season 5 or something. You're like, it was great, I loved it, but I feel like I could have ended it 4 and we all would have been happy.
Yeah, and that's a problem with a lot of series is if they keep it going too long. Sometimes if it's wrapped up in a bow, just leave it that way.
Yeah, you guys you'll all be coming back to me when Mandalorian season 3 bombs and it's terrible.
It's terrible.
It won't. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Name one character from the original trilogy that didn't appear in the sequel trilogy that you wish had made an appearance. Ashi, I'm starting with you right away on this one. What's your pick?
Okay. Since I'm going first, I'm just going to say Mace Windu.
From the original trilogy.
Oh, original trilogy. Oh, no. All right. Well, I guess I just have to go with Anakin then, the obvious answer. No. Well, yeah, that counts, right?
Yeah.
It would have been Hayden Christensen, I guess.
That counts.
Man, Star Wars is hard. But okay, I will go with Anakin. I was really, really, really hoping he would show up in Rise of Skywalker, and I was pretty bummed that it didn't happen. And going, how people make things online, and I watched something the other day where they just like put in all the Force ghosts at the end of the movie, and it was like chill inducing. So but Mace Windu was in there, so
true. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Lacey, you're up next on this one. What's one character you would have liked to seen show up?
So Hayden was a great answer, Anakin, because mine was Obi-Wan. I felt like we heard him in TFA, and I feel like that was a pretty simple thing they could have done. And I know John's mad because I stole his answer because I knew he was going to answer this. So I'm happy I went first. Yeah. Because you said this before.
We've done too many podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, I do like the Anakin pick. I don't like the Mace Windu pick because I just feel like that guy just got killed big time. But
you don't think he became one with the Force?
No, he's not down with that. He doesn't mess around with that stuff. Yeah, Qui-Gon was the first to do that. Mace Windu didn't figure that stuff out. But,
that's true. Didn't think about that.
But I mean, I guess he did figure something out because he got to be one of the voices. But the Anakin one, I agree. That could have been like a big deal. Like that could have been really cool, especially if he visited like Luke or something on.
Or Kylo.
Octo. Yeah, right. So I love that pick. But mine is Obi-Wan. I really think it would have made... And, Obi-Wan did appear via Ewan McGregor's voice and a little bit of Alec Guinness's voice. But, I mean, actually appearing... I really think they could have done something, especially with a Force Ghost, to make it visually believable, to bring back the Alec Guinness Ghost and use Steven Stanton's voice. Because if you've ever heard his Obi-Wan, it is perfection to Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan voice. I really was hoping that he would turn up, whether it's him and Yoda in The Last Jedi with Luke, or he shows up to Rey, to say these are your last steps or something like that. Like Obi-Wan being that looming presence throughout the original trilogy and being in the prequel trilogy, I feel like he was a missing part of the sequel trilogy, and they could have done it, especially when you see now what they do with all the CGI stuff with these characters. Like CGI Luke, people had their issues with it, and that's fine. But if you did Force Ghost, I think you can be a little more cloudy with it and make it more believable. I really would have loved to have seen an Alec Guinness Ghost and voiced by Steven Stanton. Like that Rebels episode he did as Obi-Wan is out of control good. So I think that would have been awesome.
Yep.
No, all great answers from you guys. I think you guys really landed on main characters. I think one of the things for me going into the sequel trilogy that I expected to see in Force Awakens that just didn't happen was Mon Mothma showing up.
She was on my short list in my head.
Short list. That's cool. The thing for me with Mon Mothma is that they very heavily leaned into her as the next political leader for the New Republic. And I thought for sure, I mean, I know time had passed and stuff, and I know they were trying to focus on Leia and the Resistance and stuff like that, but I felt there was kind of a missing angle that was... We never really saw anything happen on Hosnian Prime. And it was like, oh, the capital, Hosnian Prime, there it is. Boom, there it's gone. And that was it. And when you're looking up stuff like who's the Chancellor, it's like, there's this alien that you've never seen before. And I get it. Maybe there's some stories there that they could lead into the lineage or whatever. But that also could have added a lot of weight for her to be the one that was, still in charge or at least was there with the new Chancellor or something when she died. And then it wouldn't have just been a loss of a planet. It would have been at least a loss of a character that we cared about. And they were going to do that with Corcella, but it never ended up being put in the movie. I don't know. I kind of feel like Mon Mothma being an original trilogy character, showing up and kind of explaining a little bit of the bigger politics, was kind of something that maybe was missing from the sequel trilogy. But here nor there.
The actress Caroline Blackiston is 88, still alive. They probably could have brought her back if they wanted to.
Yeah. Oh well. Good answers, all of you. I got one more though. Let's do one more. Pick one Star Wars character to have your back in a mosh pit in a galaxy far, far away. I'm gonna actually kick this off, and it's funny. I pulled up the name of this character, and I've already immediately I closed it out, and I totally forgot. But and Lacey will know right off. But it's the character in Force Awakens who's the big guy. Grumgar, that's it. Yep.
Isn't that his name? Isn't that his name?
I think it is, because I looked it up before we did this, and then I closed out of it. No, I mean,
he lounges on the couch like this, just like.
He's like a really bad dude.
You gotta have some.
It is
you gotta have an
Grumgar.
idea that this guy is gonna just completely own a pit. It actually, it reminds me of back in the day when I was, in the crowd and stuff, and I was doing all the moshing and stuff. There was this guy who was so big, and he was just in there, and he was swinging his arms, and he was knocking kids down. I always compared him to Sauron in Lord of the Rings or something. I was like, oh my God, you need to stay away from that guy. And that was my first thought of, you want that guy? And I was like, who's that guy in Star Wars? It's Grumgar. Yeah, absolutely.
That is a funny and good pick.
John, what's your pick for Mosh Pit back?
So people will think I was going to say Chewbacca, but I am not. I am saying jacked fish.
She's like,
Sando,
what?
The Sando aqua monster. So Asha, you would know him as the bigger fish who takes the fish and bites the other fish, and he's just absolutely yoked. That guy, Jacked Fish, would be my buddy in the pit, just knocking fools out. And maybe he has to wear like a helmet with water so he can breathe. I don't know if he's like amphibious or whatever, but he's knocking fools out because he's Jacked Fish, and that's my pick.
Gotcha. All right, Lacey, who is your mosh pit pick?
Well, first of all, I would be the last person to ever be in a mosh pit of any type. That being said, based on his performance in Solo: A Star Wars Story, I would say Chewie. He was taking dudes down left and right and like football tackling people. Like Jonas was going all out, and I feel like I'd just be like Rey and Last Jedi, where she's like, Chewie! Like that would be me, because I just would be totally out of place.
Does he
does
not
beat ass in that movie?
Doesn't he double choke slam some guys?
He tackles someone. He rips people's arms off. You know.
Yeah. He drilled that one guy, like choke slammed his head into the ground.
Maybe that's what
What's that called? It's like a wrestling move, isn't it? Like called like a tombstone or something.
He didn't do a tombstone, but it's very similar. He did do something very similar. Yeah.
All right. What's your pick, Ashi?
I'm going with Dexter Jester. He's got 4 arms, so extra sick moves in the pit. He's a big guy.
He smells, so people move away from him.
Yeah. I was gonna say that. He's also he's always got your back. You know, he's Obi-Wan's boy, and I know he'd be my boy too.
I mean, he's got your back. Depends on how big your pocketbook is, but
that's true. Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah, 4 arms, man. I can imagine the dance possibilities on that guy, for sure.
Yeah, he'd be swinging.
His pants would come down, though.
Oh my gosh.
So, Lacey, you've never been in a mosh pit?
No.
John, have you ever been in a mosh pit? Yes.
Oh yeah.
I can't possibly imagine Ashi has somehow avoided them, or have you?
I've definitely not avoided them. I've avoided them in my recent years.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
In my younger days.
No, I was 100%. Yeah. Back when we were playing like floor shows and stuff, like I would climb over that first group of people and be out in the pits too, just even as a band member, you know, because our shows were just like that. But all right, that is it, guys, for One with the Force. We had a lot of fun, a lot of great answers. We're getting ready to head into the discussion, though, which is a little nuts. So, John, tell us what we're talking about.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
All right, yeah. So, we're taking liberties here with terms, but just for the sake of this discussion and technicalities, we're calling this the impact of Boba Fett having a twin sister. So it turns out Omega, who a lot of people did speculation on, the moment we saw her, is Boba Fett's twin sister, sort of, via cloning. But Jango had one other altered clone, and it turns out it is Omega from the Bad Batch. So let's kind of talk about this and what impact it could have on the future of Boba Fett, who until recently remained a pretty one-dimensional, mysterious sort of character beyond what we saw from him as a child in Attack of the Clones. We got a bit more of his personality in the book of in The Mandalorian, season 2. But are we in for an even bigger level of humanization of the character? And is that a good thing? You know, so I feel like some people, and what made me want to start with this is, I feel like old school Boba Fett fans, you know, we make the joke about the history of it and how he made his debut in the holiday special as a cartoon. People know who he was. Then the action figure came out for Empire Strikes Back, and then the movie came out. So everyone kind of like created their narrative of who this guy would be. And then he was just this mysterious sort of small character, and that's why people thought he was cool. Now we're getting like these layers to him, and he has more family and stuff. And, you know, you hear Tamara Morrison when he did that little hot tub selfie interview saying, like, I just finished Book of Boba. And he's like talking about stunts and makeup. So I got to think we're going to see more Boba Fett without his helmet on, which means they're going to be more, you know, serious dramatic exchanges and stuff like that. Maybe him crawling out of the Sarlacc, who knows? But we're going to see more of the human side of Boba Fett. And my question is, and I don't know if I have an answer to that, is that a good thing? Do we want to see every Star Wars character fleshed out with a full arc and all this stuff? Or do we like the mysterious sort of gunslinger, and we don't need to know too much about him. He's our action figure, and we love him. Just kind of, beating people up. So I just want to throw it out to you guys. Ashi, you're our guest, so we'll kick it off to you first. What are your thoughts, first of all, on the reveal of Omega also being a unaltered direct clone of Jango Fett, and how do you think maybe that leads to any kind of implications on the character of Boba Fett, and how that is going to kind of flesh itself out? Any speculation? And by the way, speculate away. That's what we do. We have a good time. It's all gravy. So what's your take on all this stuff to kick us off?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It brings up a lot of questions. I mean, for starters, what comes to mind is, that Boba is, was kind of created for Jango by choice. It was Jango's choice for him to be an unaltered clone, so he could kind of have him as like a son, right? Mm-hmm. So you wonder, what's the reasoning behind Omega? Was it something that the Kaminoans did for a particular purpose? Because I know they mentioned earlier in the season that, every clone has a purpose. Even Boba, his purpose was to be, Jango's son. So what is Omega's purpose? Why was she created unaltered? And then the next thing that comes to mind is, are they going to bring in that like lost story of Cad Bane and Boba Fett doing a shootout? So when I saw Cad Bane in the episode before this, I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I know they have some unfinished episodes where Cad Bane meets Boba Fett. So he grabs Omega, takes her back to the Kaminoans, and now they're, mentioning Boba Fett by name in this episode. So I find that interesting. Are we going to see that little storyline? And is that all going to build up even more into the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian stuff? So it's a lot of interesting stuff happening. A lot of questions raised as well. Yeah.
So James, obviously you had the opportunity to see this episode before any of us did. So mm-hmm. I'm gonna go to Lacey here to get her thoughts on it, because you, like me, weren't the biggest Boba Fett fan, and maybe we were benefited by the fact of what they gave us in, like the Mandalorian, and we saw a little more layers to him. So what is your take on maybe even more layers to the story of Boba Fett being thrown into the mix here?
So I have some questions, and these might be dumb questions. Mm-hmm. My question is, one, does Jango know that Omega exists, or was she created in private? Or is that not been answered?
No, we don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that it's been answered. I think my guess would be that we don't know.
Question two, I would assume that the clone troopers are all men because they're clones from him. So why is she a woman? That's my second question. I'm just throwing them out into the universe. Maybe people in the comments can answer them. That being said, I think it's super interesting. I mean, man, Fett-dumption is real. He is getting the ultimate storyline right now, that he's getting long lost siblings. Fennec Shand is playing into Bad Batch now, and then she's obviously going to be in the Book of Boba Fett. So does Boba Fett ever find out about Omega, or is that going to be the storyline for Book of Boba Fett, where Fennec's well, you have a sister, surprise. How is that going to work out? Yeah, I don't know. It's just nuts. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited that animation fans are getting these really cool moments that are then going to play into the live action stuff. So there is that more of that connectivity that we always look for. Because I feel oftentimes, and I'm sure James feels this way too, is that animation fans get these great stories, but they don't have those direct connections to the live action in a way that you have to watch the other stuff. It's more hey, if you want more, go check this out. This to me is a storyline that you're oh no, you need to watch this if you want to understand this other thing. So that's really cool. I don't know how I feel about the making Boba Fett a human type. Like, the whole thing that really got me to be like, yay, Boba Fett for Mandalorian is that he like came in and wrecked house. Like, he just like destroyed people. He was really like, he obviously helped out the Mandalorian because he got something from him, and it was like a give and take relationship, which ultimately at the end of the season, we see that he moves on and becomes the ruthless person that we know him as. But I really loved that like very savage nature of him, of like, I'm just going to kill everyone and I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm out for revenge. And I found that super interesting. Now, I get it that at deep down, we're all human. We all have, you know, emotions, and there's things that drive the decisions and choices that we make. And that's a big theme in Star Wars, is like making those right and wrong decisions and how they affect other people in the universe, etc. I don't know. I just got like a very giddy joy out of watching him destroy stormtroopers. So I'm kind of really wanting that for the series, which I know is very stupid and like one line, one dimensional character. So I'm interested to see where it goes, especially if Filoni's involved. You know, there's going to be some type of heart that comes into the story. Yeah, I don't know where it's going to go.
So, James, you've been shepherding our version of reacting to Bad Batch with the Bad Batch reaction show, losing a lot of sleep, getting up early, doing the thing.
What? Sorry, what? I fell asleep.
James. But also, you obviously did a lot of speculation on Omega throughout your journey so far with this show and reacting. So, what was your reaction when you saw it before everybody, and what's your take on how this weaves in and all of it?
Didn't people think it was Palpatine at first? Like, I remember seeing those theories when she showed up people thought it was a Palpatine clone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's obviously a lot of cloning going on even in this particular episode and stuff. Like, we don't really know what they're getting into with, like, you know, characters and tubes and all sorts of stuff that's going on. The thing that is really driving to me is like, I've speculated that Omega might be Force sensitive. And the thing is like, after we saw this episode and I got to sit down with Brad and Jennifer who work on the show, you know, they clearly implied that, you know, there's more to this character even beyond what we saw in the latest episode. So I think there's more that could be uncovered with Omega's character down the line. But I think already, like, this is crazy. You know, this is big news, and it's interesting, you know, what we know about Lucasfilm and these storytellers and how they seed things. Dave Filoni is obviously a little involved in this, and he's a little involved in, you know, Book of Boba Fett and, you know, and stuff. So it's like, there are people who are definitely working on these projects consecutively. So making the Bad Batch, creating the character of Omega with some intent that she's important, this is her story, is surely not going to lead to the end of the series where she dies. You have to imagine that she's probably going to make it out of this series. And when do we ever see this character again? It's starting to make sense to me what Lacey was saying. There's a reason they also brought in Fennec Shand. There's also a reason that Boba Fett and Fennec Shand are in the Book of Boba Fett together. There's a good possibility that Boba Fett, or Tamara Morrison, I should say, now referring to, we're going to go back, we're going to see where he's been, we're going to see some of his history. It's like, all of a sudden, this stuff starts to make sense, and I really start to question if Omega is going to become a live-action character, and the Bad Batch exists for a short term right now, not only to continue the Clone Wars and kind of wrap up, you know, that era of the clones, but also to set in future storytelling for one particular character and where that character goes. Right now, they've already seeded this new unveiling that Boba Fett has family, whereas, like, our understanding of Boba Fett is, like, he only had one person in his life that he could call family, and that was Jango Fett, and we watched him be murdered on screen. So it's like, he's been a loner since then. This revelation that there's another person out there that's not a clone, that is like more of a sister to him, is crazy, right? You know, they refer to him as Alpha in the episode. She is Omega. They are the beginning and the end. It's nuts, you know? So I don't know. I mean, that's initially like where what I take away from the impact of Boba Fett having a sister. That's nuts to me.
Ashi, did you think, like, when you were watching Bad Batch, did you get, like, pick up on the hints or believe the hints that Omega might be Force sensitive also? Because I kind of leaned that way a little bit too when she's like, oh, I had a feeling, and, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. because I'd say maybe 60-40. I'm going to say 60% not force sensitive.
Okay.
But there's always a chance. You never know. And that kind of goes back to what, I had mentioned before about, creating a character for a purpose. They say that she's unaltered. So if she is force sensitive, I guess it would just have to have been by chance. Mm-hmm. But whether she's force sensitive or not, I guess I'm just more interested in the purpose for which she was created, and what role she plays on Kamino, essentially, because it seems like she's kind of the Kaminoans thing. You know what I mean? So
yeah, obviously it's interesting how they care about the. I don't know. Obviously, this episode had a lot of like Blade Runner-esque to it, like that thought of like, is a replicant a person, an individual, or are they property of their creators? Like, obviously, that was part of the story here too. So it's really interesting, the dynamic of not just looking at Omega as what we see her as a person, a clone, an individual that has life and existence, but like also as like a piece of property that they need to get back because she has all this genetic information in her that's important to their process.
The only thing that makes me a little nervous, and, I'm a huge Palpatine fan, of course, is, there's been belief or speculation that what's been going on with the blood of Grogu is for research for Palpatine's return and that sort of thing. And we saw what may have been like Snoke in the water or the clone, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like Omega being a clone of a non-force sensitive person and turning out to have a midichlorian count high enough to manipulate the Force. Is that a realization where Palpatine finds this out and discovers like, oh, clones can also use the Force, and if I do return, I can still use my powers. I'm not saying they're going to go that way, and that's a wild speculation point, but we've seen how much they weave Palpatine into this stuff, and I'm not ruling it out entirely, because you do have a clone of Jango Fett who is just a bounty hunter. As far as we know, I don't think they're retconning Jango Fett is some force-sensitive person. That his direct clone can use the Force. You missed that
in the show. They talked about it.
I know. Yeah, he just killed that reek using the Force. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so I know it's an outlandish thing. I'm just throwing it out there because we're having a good time here. I'm just tossing that out there. I don't know that I would like it, but it wouldn't shock me if that's something that they went with. Seeing Palpatine find out, because he was tied in with all the clones, and that's what caused him to create the Empire. Finding out that clone somehow was able to use the Force, and him saying, I can come back. I can do what my master couldn't do and come back from the dead. I'm just tossing that out there. I know it's ridiculous.
It just makes me laugh because I feel like a couple months ago, before Bad Batch came out, we were kind of discussing like, are we cloned out? Are clones too much in Star Wars? And then they're like, surprise, there's another clone, and it's Boba Fett's sister, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're going with this.
Well, hey, I mean, going into Bad Batch, I wasn't even really that excited for the show. I was like, okay. Right. The Bad Batch arc in the last season of Clone Wars was like, okay, whatever. And
that's how everybody felt. Okay.
And we all got hooked on this show like real quick. Like first episode, everyone was like, let's go, give me some more. And it just keeps getting better. So you never know.
I definitely think like part of the reason that people didn't vibe with the Bad Batch, and also Trace and Rafa and all that, I think because those episodes were the episodes that like you brought Clone Wars back for these episodes, like that's not what we want to see. Get to the stuff that's get to
Ahsoka Maul,
the real Ahsoka stuff. Get to the Maul stuff. You put that stuff in the trailer. That's what we're excited for. So it was like every week, like trying to be excited about this episodes, but being like, okay, 2 more of these and then we'll get to the good stuff. And I think people like really overlooked that. Now that we get an entire series that's based around these characters, now that they've brought Trace and Rafa back in. All of a sudden now you saw the vibe and the reaction to those characters returning. People are like, I was a little not sure about them in the original. Now I'm more on board with how, that was a setup for their return. I think Bad Batch is kind of justifying a little bit of those first episodes of Clone Wars. They're saying like, hey, those weren't just random filler episodes that we put out there to hold you over till you got to the Maul and Ahsoka stuff. They had purpose. Here is the long purpose. Game. Yeah. And we're going to tell these stories. So, right. I don't know, but I mean, going back to the thing of it though, is you guys were mentioning, like, are you cloned out? Like, I don't know. It's so funny. I barely even think of the Bad Batch as clones. Like, for some reason, they vibe to me as like 4 individual characters that are just in this world trying to get by, and they're trying to protect this girl. And every once in a while, they'll say like, oh, she's, Jango Fett's like daughter kind of thing. And I'm like, should have seen that coming. She looks just like him.
Yeah.
I don't see how they don't
got any more clones.
Any more than clones.
I don't see how they don't incorporate that now. Cause like, Lacey brought up, they brought Fennec Shand in. It was obviously for a reason. It wasn't just, hey, let's just, use the actress for
which seemed random at first. I mean, Ming-Na said that she was just like, I don't know if I should do this, not knowing that she'd be coming back for Mandalorian season 2.
Right. And she's obviously done voice work before with Mulan, so it's not foreign to her. But I'm thinking like age-wise, and I would try to do this, this takes place, about 19 or so BBY. I don't know, Omega's like 11 or 12 years old. So you're trying to do the math there, and you figure Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian's like 9 years after the Galactic Civil War. So you're going to get like Omega's like in her 40s during the time of Book of Boba Fett. Like, we may see, who knows, a familiar actress that we know all of a sudden showing up, and imagine they're the villain of the Book of Boba Fett or something, and they do this big family rival thing. Like, they could do something like that and make it this big family thing for Boba Fett, more than just, it's Boba Fett just doing Boba Fett things. Look at him go, So and again, we may go back, look at this episode and be like, well, I was so stupid to think that. But
yeah,
I think that every week.
Next week's Bad Batch episode would be like, that information was false. That's not, we never know how quickly things can change. But
the soap opera thing,
Going back to the Force sensitivity thing, like, I have been rallying that if that was my guess, and it's been a total guess, I didn't really have like a good reason for that. I just was trying to look for something that was, how could we make this character special? To me, like I said earlier, it seems like they might even have more planned for this character, but I'm starting to think that when you tell me something like that, and I put together what I did before, Fennec Shand's in this, she's going to be in this, and the character living out through the series and stuff, all that starts to fall into, she doesn't need to be Force sensitive anymore at this point. I feel like they already have done something that really shines a light on the fact that you can probably go out to anybody and be like, do you like Star Wars? And if they say yes, you'd be like, you know who Boba Fett is, right? And they go, yes. And then you go, did you know she has a sister? And all of a sudden that's new information, good, bad, interesting, whatever. It's something that is so, I don't know, like divergent from what you understood about the original trilogy now, that it just really adds this new wrench to the storytelling possibilities. And I think it's a really cool twist. And it's funny that you compare that to Luke and Leia too. It's like, all of a sudden now, out of nowhere, this character that you've been following has a twin sister. It's like, what? Like Darth Vader. What?
Boba Fett goes to Obi-Wan like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, dude, I don't know you. I'm not
But yeah, it's like, it's you can compare that to, like, are we cloned out? Well, not anymore, because they're doing a good job with the show. Are we done with too many sisters? Well, I don't know. If if she's Boba Fett's sister and they make a really good story out of it, then no, that wasn't a bad choice. You know what I mean? It all just depends on execution, and we'll get there when we get there. But I hope it turns out cool.
That's a great point, because there's so many times you're like the whole adage, like, nobody asked for blank. Nobody asked for a young Han Solo film. Nobody asked for this, and then people see it and they're like, that's pretty damn good. So that's a great point, Ashi, and a positive, spin on something. Like, you can still say like, I'm kind of all set with the clone thing, and then they do it right, and you're like, yeah, but it was good. You don't have to take the hard line, Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just wait and see.
Yeah.
I like the
Boba Fett
thing
thing,
you
though.
said. Everybody gets a sister. Like the character Wopra is going to show up and be like, "You get a sister. You get a sister."
Oprah is a Kaminoan and just like giving out clones to people.
Well, yeah, it's like people do complain sometimes, like with everybody being related to each other in Star Wars kind of thing. What I mean? So, but and I think like Leia being Luke's sister at first was probably kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah, definitely.
For obvious reasons, the kiss. But
4 kisses, buddy.
Right. But it's like, now that we have so much like encompassing story around it, it's like, oh, it's great. We love that they're brother and sister, and like we feel that they're brother and sister on a deeper level. You know what I mean? Because they've told such good stories around it. So
yeah. Were you always a Boba Fett fan?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, so
who isn't?
Wait, I wasn't the biggest fan.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, really?
I was like Boba Fett. We did a March Madness thing, and I drafted him as the coolest character, and I was third. I lost to Darth Vader and Kylo Ren, but I was like, I would have thought for sure he was like my number 1 pick. Like, everybody thinks Boba Fett's the coolest character.
Yeah,
but my reasoning is because he dies a chump death prior to The Mandalorian, and I was like, is he really that cool if that's how he dies? But I get it. I understand why people like him. Now
great.
I think he's super cool.
Yeah. Just great character design. And, it's like, it's hard not to like an awesome helmet.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's like, some people preferred him just being like a mysterious guy in the background. And they're going to really have to like, really make us like the character to really break some of those people out of that.
Yeah, so that's why I want to ask you to kind of close out this part of the discussion is, as a Boba Fett fan for a long time now, how has his return changed how you feel about the character? Has it elevated it? Has it made you like, well, let's see how it turns out? Like, where do you where are you at now with Boba Fett being a fan going into all this before his return?
I think if anything, it's elevated it. I mean, like I said, the character design's always going to be there. And it's like coming from the Clone Wars and, the prequels and Tamura Morrison. To me, Tamura Morrison is already Boba Fett. So just to be able to see him, it's funny. It's like you've never really seen him play Boba Fett. But because of all this other material, you just know that he's Boba Fett. And then when you see him on screen, it just makes sense. And I've enjoyed seeing, what he did in The Mandalorian. And I'm very interested to see what they do with Book of Boba Fett. Like, I don't know how they're going to go like back and show some stories from, I guess, maybe like right after Return of the Jedi when he was younger than he obviously is now. Well, I guess how many years was it?
He said
9 years.
He said Empire even in his hot tub video. He's like revisiting where has he been since Empire.
So are they going to go with like what they did with Luke Skywalker and do it with Tamura Morrison and make a younger version of him? Or,
they could, or just keep him in the helmet.
Or just keep him in the helmet.
Yeah, keep him in the helmet and show, like they might have like one shot of like a de-aged whatever digital, like of him climbing out, and then he puts the helmet on and they kick in with the Boba Fett theme music, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, he's back, or whatever.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I am very excited for the Book of Boba Fett, and maybe even a little more now that they're teasing us with potential more story beats coming out of Bad Batch. So I don't know, James, Lacey, any final thoughts before we answer some questions?
Not really.
Not really for me. I think we've covered all the big implications that this could set forth, but we're excited. I think we're all on the same page of excited to see where they go. Yeah,
and I guess that is a big question, like Lacey posed at the beginning. did Django know? And is that going to be a big thing that we find out?
Because he made it clear he wanted a son, and then they made a girl.
An unaltered, he wanted one unaltered son for his own, and it's interesting. But Ashi, you're right. Like the fact that it's Tamara Morrison, it makes it that much more acceptable. Even if you are like, I'm also with Boba Fett, you're like, but I love Tamara Morrison. This guy just kills it. So
yes,
for sure. All right. So next, we're gonna move on to some questions. Give our takes on these. To take us towards the end of the show. It is Ask the Resistance, so we post these on Twitter and ask you to submit them. So you guys ready to answer some of these?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
All right. Lacey, do you want to read them, or would you?
No, you got it.
All righty. This first one is from Vader's Thoughts at Vader Thinks. They said, sometimes the handles are better than the questions, but we'll see on this. Do you see the Bad Batch having any kind of happy ending, or are we destined for heartbreak when the series concludes? So let's just go around and give our quick thoughts. James, you kind of touched on this a little bit as far as Omega goes. So what do you think?
I think they'll probably have some sort of like sense of tragedy, like characters died, but the word I would apply to it is hopeful, and I think that's probably the best example for like Rogue One, for instance. Like obviously very crazy ending, but not sad. It was hopeful. They had a purpose, they had their story. This is it, but there's more stories to tell. We're moving on past this. I think hopeful is the right word.
What do you guys think, Lacey?
I agree with James. I think people are definitely going to die. This is what we know, Star Wars. Someone always dies. As for happy, I don't know if I'd say happy just based on the track record of where we ultimately end up with Star Wars, how we feel. It really depends. The hopeful thing, I think they're going to try to do that because that's the big message of Star Wars. But I think it relates to who people's favorite characters are, which is how they leave the series or movie of if it's hopeful or not. Because your favorite character might die and you're like, that's not hopeful at all. But like the overarching story with other characters is hopeful. So I think, unfortunately, Vader thinks that you are going to have some heartbreak, but hopefully it's not something you can move on from.
Ashi, happy ending, heartbreak. Where's Bad Batch wrapping up?
I was thinking about it. It's like going to be hard to kill one or two members of the Bad Batch, or maybe just leave one of them alive. I think that would be so strange. Whereas at the same time, it might be also kind of strange to kill all of them. But if I had to put money on it, I would say that they would go out to make sure Omega survives.
Ooh, I
think that's probably where they're going to go with it. But yeah, it's like, I think it would be weird if they all die, but like maybe only Hunter survives or something. So it seems like I think they're all going to go out in a blaze of glory to save Omega. That's where I'd put my money.
I'm not ready, Ashi. Cool.
Oh yeah, we're going to be really choking out. I'll tell you that much.
I think it's tough because of where this is in the timeline of Star Wars. Like, this is not a good time to be a good guy in Star Wars. This is that dark period where the Empire is really rising. Yeah. And it's that whole question, like, when you tell these stories before the original trilogy, where do these people go during that whole epic war when they really probably could have used these guys? So that because of that stuff, I always usually lean towards they're not going to be around. So I think when they introduce these stories around that timeline, you got to either send them off on a Purgle somewhere like Ezra, or Kanan, which is go out, like you said, Ashi, doing something for the greater good of your family or whatever. So I'm kind of leaning on that way there. All right. So this next one here is from Dakota Latusik. What's up, man? At D Latusik 12. Favorite prequel era ship, Star Cruiser or Starfighter, and why? Ashi, what do you got?
I'm going to go pretty basic with just like the Nubian Starfighter. I think that one kind of like sticks out nostalgia wise in my head for the prequels. It's one of the first things I remember seeing when I saw Phantom Menace, and it's just a cool ship. Totally different from previous Star Wars designs, super sleek and really indicative of like what they were going for those prequel movies. And yeah, just another great Star Wars design. So it's my vote.
Yeah. Very cool. Lacey, what do you got?
I agree, 100%. N1 Starfighter. It's the thing I first think of when you mention the prequels of like, what does a ship look like then? And going back to when I saw The Phantom Menace for the first time, or just when I was little, I always wanted to do the whole Anakin scene where he gets stuck in the ship and then he blows everything up by accident, and then like he's talking to R2. Like, to me, that whole section growing up, and it still is, but like more then, was that it was just so fun and exciting, and this little kid saved the day. It kind of really set in the motion of, oh, I'm little, I could fly that ship with R2-D2 and save the day. So I'm gonna say, yeah, the N1 Starfighter.
Right on. James, what do you got?
The N1 Starfighter. I know, seriously. I was like, oh man.
It's colored too. None of the ships are usually colored, and it's a bright yellow. It's like really cool.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it's just like you assume that everybody else is going to have these answers, but like that's a testimony to this particular ship. Is like somebody says favorite prequel or ship, and you like start thinking for a second, and you're like, oh man, that one's amazing, and it pops out. And we actually saw it at Celebration. I'm sure he's probably talked about it more, but it's the first time I'd heard it. Doug Chang talking about the design behind that and the ships is, you know, he talks a lot about the silhouette, and immediately that ship, I mean, there's a whole other like Padme's cruiser or whatever, you know, you might not be able to pick it out, but that one immediately, like, you're going to know it right away. And, you know, the way he describes, like, well, if Star Wars was kind of supposed to take place like in the 80s, what was style 30 years ago? So they went back to the 50s and they drew inspiration from that. It's like, I look at this thing and I'm like, man, there's a lot of story involved in how that ship came to be. And it really kind of encapsulates the prequels to me. So John, what do you got?
I'm not picking the N1. I'm going right. with the J-type 327 Nubian.
Yeah.
Just because it's so sleek, and it reminds me a little bit of like Flight of the Navigator, but which is an old Disney movie from the 80s. But oh yeah, you're right on, man. Yeah, yes, that is a classic.
So we'll have to talk about that movie later because I got some opinions on it.
All right. No, yeah, the Nubian, like, it just kind of set the tone for the story, and just seeing like R2 on top of it and how sleek and smooth it was, and also the implications, of course, of with Palpatine and giving it to Vader and all that stuff. So I'm gonna go with the Nubian. All right, two more here. This one's from Goat at Goat Skywalker.
I was gonna say, is that Obi-Wan's thing? But then
it must be Obi-Wan's. Yeah,
it's the greatest Skywalker of all time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He can't be Skywalker.
Yeah, so I wonder who they're referencing. But they said, how do you think the Mando era will conclude, and how will it affect the sequels, or could it even carry over to the sequel trilogy? I think Mando's going to conclude sort of in a Western way, where either Mandalorian's going to die protecting like Grogu, or he's going to like fake his death and kind of like lay low and
Batman
reside. Yeah, Batman Rise, or what is it? Dark Knight Rises. Yeah. So something like that. I don't know that it's going to have any implications on the sequel trilogy. I hope not, because the idea behind this show was that it was supposed to kind of isolate itself and not have the baggage that all the fans carry with the Skywalker saga.
It already has, though, with the cloning stuff.
I know. I hope they don't go too much further with that. I hope maybe they could touch on it and say, like, yes, this has implications later, but Mando himself and stuff doesn't. So that's where I'm at. James, your turn.
I think I'm with you that it will not affect the sequels too greatly or carry over into the sequel trilogy. My first thought is, sure, why not? Like, they could keep going with these stories and they don't have to actually relevant like or reference the major events that are happening in the New Republic or whatever, and you could just still continue with these characters in these like outer rim territories and stuff. But I don't know, just the time involvement and how they want to kind of focus. These are our stories. This is Favreau's area of storytelling, and so I just think they want to notch out that a little bit. It's cool to spread it out, but not anything that's really going to tie into like the major stuff, I don't think.
All right, Ashi.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely will tie into the sequels in one way or another. So it could be very small, something like, obviously we've already seen like the cloning and the tank with something in it. I think they'll probably take it a few steps further than that, but I don't think that they're gonna like dive in and directly tie it. But I think it will lead to something else that then bridges those two things together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like Mando going right into the prequels, but it is going to leave us a few hints here and there that are going to be picked up by some other series somewhere else and eventually bridge Mandalorian to the sequels. I know a lot of people maybe don't want want them to stay as far away from the sequels as possible. And I kind of think that they should go for it and dive into it because, you know, they did it with Clone Wars and the prequels and it turned out great and it really strengthened the overall story. Mm-hmm. And I think if they play their cards right, they could do the same thing because I really do enjoy a lot of parts of the sequels. And I think anything that they can do, and Star Wars is really good at this, in just strengthening the overall story with more information. I think they should.
Nice. All right. That's a good argument.
Yeah.
All right, Lacey, what say you?
I think Mando's going to conclude with the Mandalorian dying. I think that's pretty obvious that he's going to die. I think Grogu's going to go on to do something else, and I think that's where we're going to probably see him in other things, but then eventually after the sequel trilogy, I think he'll show up eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know if The Mandalorian is going to tie into the sequels that much, only because what we've seen from Jon Favreau, he's making a story that he wants to make that are tied to the original trilogy. He makes kind of nods here and there to the prequels, but I don't think that's him doing it. I think it's Filoni or someone else kind of adding those things. We've seen clips of Jon Favreau not getting deep cuts or like, hey, this is from this and this is from this. And Favreau's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think if there are tie-ins, it's not from Favreau wanting to connect everything together. I think it's from someone else at Lucasfilm being like, hey, what if you just add this? It's a little nod to something like that. I think Favreau really wants to tell a story that can stand on its own and it doesn't need to be a part of anything bigger other than obviously within the Star Wars universe. So I'm going to say no.
All right.
Can I jump in? Because
sure.
All this talk about it, I'm starting to think of something. Which do you think is more likely that the character dies in their series, knowing that we will get a crossover event in all these different series? Ahsoka or Mandalorian?
Ahsoka.
You think it's more likely that Ahsoka dies? And I would assume so too.
You hear her voice at the end of the sequel trilogy. She's dead.
True. So my thought is that if you're not, you probably won't kill her in the series. You would kill her probably then in the crossover event because she has to represent her series going into it. So if she dies in the crossover,
but the crossover
event,
could be after Ahsoka.
Yeah, it could be Ezra. Like she finds Ezra, she dies, passes the torch.
She dies in the Ahsoka series. So then Ezra is the character that goes into the crossover event. I guess.
I'll say I don't think they're gonna kill Ahsoka in like a comic book. You know what I mean?
No, it's going to be on screen.
That's my point. Is I was saying if she makes it through her series and she goes to the crossover event, the crossover event would be her death, and then that's the end of it all. So that's the end of all those stories. They're not going to kill Ahsoka and the Mandalorian in the same crossover event. So maybe he lives because Ahsoka is probably the main character that they're going to want to kill off in live action.
Or maybe they do one more season after the crossover event, and that's when the Mandalorian dies.
That's true. That's also a possibility. I don't know. It's just I was going crazy. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Mando living because he's human and he doesn't live like 100 years like a lot of characters do. So he could just kind of live and then, it's just past his time eventually. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think Ahsoka is going to need to go out in like a more impactful way. So
yeah.
Agreed.
Imagine Mando has the Darksaber, he fights Ahsoka, and Mando kills Ahsoka.
Whoa.
That would never happen. That would never happen. That would never happen.
Oh,
what if
fans
it's
would
the
just be
only
like,
way?
what?
And she goes, "It's okay, do it," and he like has to do it.
Yeah.
I hate
And he's
that.
like, this is the way. That's what I've been talking about this whole time. All right. So we've been talking about this on the podcast for a while, how it would be a no-brainer for Disney to keep Grogu around, like Lacey just mentioned, after the sequel trilogy and have him and Rey be the new like Jedi. You have a 100-year-old Grogu. That's around the age Yoda was training Jedi. So what color? That's the last question of the episode. From May the Way be with you at May the Way be wit one. So they didn't get their handle. What color do you think Grogu's lightsaber is going to be? They're hoping for green. Lacey, what do you think?
First of all, I love that you spelled color in the UK way. I love seeing that. It just looks so much smarter than like the way we write color. It's just like, you sound so much more intelligent. I'm going to say green too. I feel like that's an obvious choice. I've seen people do fan art with green. I think it would be really cool because he's green, his lightsaber's green. So I'm going to say the obvious answer that I think a lot of people want. And my home screen is actually Baby Yoda with a green lightsaber. So.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Wait, put it on your other camera so I could see it too.
Oh
man. Yeah, that's cool. All right, green for Lacey. Ashi, what color?
I think it's got to be green, I would say.
Yeah, buddy. Welcome to the team.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Luke passes Yoda's lightsaber down to Grogu.
Oh, that would be badass.
You had to get deep with that. Oh,
I love it though. I'll take it.
that is good.
Because who else would have Yoda's lightsaber?
I didn't even think. Yeah, where's Yoda's lightsaber?
Assuming Yoda brought it with him to Dagobah, and then Yoda dies, and Luke's just like, well, better search for some valuables.
Take the lightsaber, take the mini cloak. He gives the cloak to Grogu.
Just, hey, gives him everything.
What can I eBay?
Yeah.
I love that we're so nerdy that we're always like keeping track of objects in our fandom. We're always like, where's this thing that this one person touched?
Well, again, I brought this up multiple times, but the blanket that Yoda is sleeping in is Qui-Gon's like Jedi robes, which is nuts. And it's like, I don't know, some of the stuff, the way they tie it in is just crazy.
All right, James, what color?
Well, obviously green is the new Nubian starfighter. Because I think it's across the board here. To me, I think there's something about it. He's so close to Yoda that when you think of Yoda and you think of him having the green lightsaber, you got to associate it with Grogu as well. And at this point, I feel like if he turned on that lightsaber, like I'm trying to, in my mind's eye, put together this scene, and he turns it on and it's blue, purple, yellow, any color, I'm like, that's wrong. Like, it's not supposed to be that color. He needs to turn it on and it's green, because then it will feel right. So
like Rey with yellow, I felt like, yes, of course hers is yellow. To me, I just had that in my head that hers was going to be yellow.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of fans thought that,
you say that
because she's just like a bright, sunny personality type character that people just assumed hers was going to be yellow to be different. I know a lot of like fan fiction people and stuff had done yellow for years.
Well,
yeah, John.
I I'm going with blue. But, all right. So the reason is I feel like my logic is they want to differentiate him from Yoda a bit. And Yoda was green with the green lightsaber. If he had the green too, I feel like it would be too much of a close parallel. Plus, I think it would be a fresh take, especially if they do pair him up later with, Rey. And if Finn's a Jedi, I was speculating Finn would have a green lightsaber.
Finn's going to have blue.
I don't think so. Because they want to separate him from pre-Jedi Finn, who had the blue one. So I'm going Rey yellow, Finn green, Grogu blue, and that's my final answer. Yeah, but anyway,
so wrong. Everything you just said is wrong.
I'm not opposed to the Finn green thing. I still think it's a little weird with the Grogu blue though.
I did predict the end of the Rise of Skywalker, so
congratulations, John.
All right,
that's funny. The script leaked in August, but yeah, you guessed it.
Like 2 years before. Just stop it. All right. That takes us to the end of the show. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. We do want to say a special thank you to our Patreon generals and spice runners who allow us to keep doing this and keep growing. So Carmelo, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, John Reese, Jetta Rosewater, Michael Gaines, Paul Olson, Jake Houchins, Oliver Lewis, Frank Grande, Hass Islam, Joe Ritchie, Darth Hurricane, Timothy Hill, John Charlton, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Val Trichkoff, and our spice runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Double C, Chris, Kendall Gellner, Ryan Wara, Dave Hornack, and Micah Harrison. Thank you all so much for all of your support. Ashi, again, we hit the plugs at the top, but let people know where they can find you, what you're doing, also what the band's doing. Just plug away, whatever you want. Word vomit, go for it, dude.
Okay. You can find me on social media at Ashi Bashar, twitch.tv/Ashi Bashar. I stream 2 or 3 nights a week usually. And my band is called Beartooth at Beartooth Band, and we have a new record out. It is called Below, and it's heavy.
Nice. And catch you guys on the road this summer and into the fall, right?
Yes, sir. You can pretty much catch us on the road indefinitely, starting mid-August. So
very cool, man.
Keep your eye out.
All right. And make sure you all subscribe to our show on YouTube or your preferred audio podcast platform, Star Wars Newsnet, for all your Star Wars news. You could find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies, and Star Wars Newsnet. Lacey.
Mm-hmm. People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gillerin.
James.
Twitter and Instagram at Meyer Trunks. Bad Batch tomorrow. Book Discussions is on the channel now. Go check it out.
Excelente. Ashi, dude, this was a great time. Great discussions. You had excellent points about a lot of things, and we want to thank you for coming back. And hopefully, I know you're gonna be busy, but we need to at least finish the first Ashi trilogy with our podcast. We need to have you back sometime down the road, man. So thank you for joining us.
Ashi Strikes Back right now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love talking Star Wars. See you soon, hopefully.
Awesome. Cool. All right. And thank you all for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.